Hello everybody, welcome back to Kanga TV, home of North Melbourne fans, and welcome to the Round 8 review. North Melbourne going down to Essendon by 3 points last night at Marvel Stadium in a Thursday night blockbuster. North Melbourne 9-8-62, defeated by Essendon 9-11-65. And it was another heartbreaking encounter in the lives of North Melbourne supporters all across the world. And this club, time and time again, tests my patience and my resilience and finds new ways to break my soul. But I have to be honest, I sat there at the end of the game last night and I was upset and I was hurt, but the overwhelming emotion for me was just numb and emptiness. And I've woken up this morning devastated, yet feeling pretty empty and not really feeling anything at all. And that's a terrible place to be. I'm not disengaged. I am not emotionless. Whenever there's been an opportunity there for the taking for North Melbourne, there's been a few times this season alone we've just failed to take it with both hands and really make something of it. And this isn't going to be all doom and gloom. There was obviously a lot to like last night, but I'm sick of trying to find positives when the result is always the same. Like, I'm so tired of trying to justify games that we've lost, which we probably should have won, with, oh, but this is a positive. Oh, that's a positive. And I understand that that's probably extremely draining for viewers of a YouTube channel. When I'm sitting here talking about North Melbourne, I've always been the optimist. I've always been the positive one. And I sat here 2 weeks ago after the Good Friday game. I didn't review the game. And I put out a call to arms and just sort of said, like, North Melbourne, like, something's got to change here. And yes, things have drastically changed in the last fortnight. But the most important thing still hasn't changed. And that's the will to win and finding a way to win. And I know that at some point all the pieces of the puzzle will click to the point where we get the 4 points. But that game was an opportunity gone way, way, way begging. And the umpiring in the first half was woeful. 30 free kicks between the two sides by halftime. I mean, that is just outrageous. How can you possibly have a game of free-flowing footy and possibly have a game where both sides are just able to play when the umpires are dictating just about everything that's going on field? And then, of course, we had an epic third quarter, and that third quarter is one of the best quarters of football I've seen from North Melbourne for a long time, with the exception of that last quarter against the D's. It was epic. And obviously we had the rub of the green then. But this club faced extreme adversity this week within a 5-day break. And we've gone over this. The Paul Curtis suspension upheld, we didn't challenge. George Wardlaw, Corky, rested for the game. Halfway through the second quarter, we lose Jackson Archer to a hamstring injury. He looked like he was in a lot of pain. Who knows how long we're going to be without him. The whole Kane Corns saga, an out-of-form Shees, an out-of-form Jai Simpkin. Like, the script was there for us to, rather than act the victim, and rather than us carry on and say, poor old North, and even at half-time, rather than us saying, poor old North, the umpires are against us again, just stuff it. take destiny into your own hands and win that game. And we absolutely should have won it. But the reality is that when you have yet another slow start to a game of footy, you're 3 goals down, 7 minutes into the first quarter, we barely touched the football in the first half of the first quarter. Are we just going to miraculously come back once again? Because we've failed to do it just about every single other time this season. And I think that there is the root cause of my numbness this morning and after the game. There's definitely hurt and there's definitely frustration and anger and heartbreak and heartache. But the fact that numbness is now part of the equation kind of worries me as someone who is an extremely loyal and emotional football watcher and analyst. Like I've said this before, I come on here and do my reviews and previews and I add, of course, numbers and stats and facts, but the natural response for me is to just sit down and get everything off my chest that I have to say. And a lot of that comes from the heart. And that's the way I find it's best to connect with you guys watching at home. So the fact that a part of me feels nothing and a part of me almost just expected another loss. Like a part of me just didn't think we had the resilience to challenge. And even when we did, and even in that late in that last quarter, we find yet another way to lose. Giving up a 9-goal lead in the middle of last year, completed it. Interchange infringement, completed it. Player runs up the shot clock and is forced to play on. We've now completed that too. And the loss shouldn't and doesn't rest on Finbar's shoulders. I thought he was awesome last night and he gave our forward line a real touch of magic and a real dangerous touch. And I thought we looked quite dangerous as a whole forward line with 3 tall forwards. Gave us some more options, especially because our natural entry into the forward 50 is this long bomb helicopter kick. Well, all of a sudden you've got a guy down there who can take a contested mark, a pretty good contested mark at that, which he proved a few times last night, Finbar Maley. And he was really composed when he kicked that first goal. So it was a real shame that what could have been the hero and the match winner wasn't quite the script that we had in mind. But part of me feels like this keeps happening because we're not learning our lesson. 0 from 8 to start the season in first quarters. Yet another slow start absolutely cost us. And the Bombers only kicked 3 goals after quarter time. So it was absolutely there for the taking for North. And we just couldn't get it done. And it's a real shame because it just doesn't get easier. It's never going to be easy when you're sitting 17th on the ladder, but it doesn't get easier next week. We have a 9-day break, which I think I can speak for everyone by saying I think we really need this before we go back to Tassie. It's our second last home game in Tassie against the reigning premiers. Awesome. Can't wait. Oh, God. All right. Enough from me. Let's just get straight into the game. Let's start with Finbar Maley, our debutant. He took such a great mark in the first quarter and got us on the scoreboard. I think I speak for everyone when I just say my eyes just lit up and I just felt so great for him. I was actually beaming for him. He really, really deserves it. He had been teased a few times to make his debut earlier in the season and he finally got his opportunity and he definitely did make the most of it. It is so unfortunate that he, like I said, ran down that shot clock and I don't know how much of that is a lack of communication from his teammates. Do we need the shot clock back on the big screen at Marvel? I thought that was always the case. It was always a shot clock. I didn't see it when he was taking his shot. But look, he competed really well in the air. He gave us, like I said, another option up forward, a new option up forward, and definitely in the absence of Paul Curtis, I think it's worth persisting with him for the next couple of weeks. It was really nice to see Nick Larkey contribute. It was really good to see Cam Zurhaar contribute. I think that was the one thing I was really pleased with last night in terms of our forward line. Jack Darling didn't have an impact on the scoreboard, but I thought he presented really nicely and he created a good option further afield. Jacob Constanti, his pressure in the forward line has completely changed the dynamic of our forward line. It has absolutely been a key reason as to why we've been able to repeat entry into our forward 50 and really squeeze teams in there. I think his work rate is excellent, and he's got a bit of mongrel in him. I think he's exactly the kind of player we needed at North Melbourne, and he's definitely been the surprise packet for me so far in season 2025. I didn't really know what to expect from him, and I just sort of thought he was the steak knives as part of the Luke Parker deal, and I never thought that he would get his opportunity to play. But not only is he getting an opportunity, but he is such an integral part, like I said, of that forward line and of that team defensive structure, which I have to say in the last 2 weeks has definitely improved. This is the first time this season that we've kept a side under 70 points for the year. Last week was the first time we kept a side under 100 points. So definitely some positives there, and if we can repeat this performance, then we'll definitely be better off for it as the season goes on. So it probably isn't all doom and gloom, and I completely understand that, but you know, from a supporter's perspective, when you go to the footy because you want to see your football team not just be competitive but to win games of footy, it's a bit of a hard pill to swallow. But when you do dig a little bit deeper, then it is really nice to see the improvement, and some players that maybe have flown under the radar in the past are sort of starting to come to the surface. And a really important part of a side developing and a side turning into a good AFL side is when their bottom 6 to 10 players probably start to lift and start to have an impact. And one of those guys I thought last night was Riley Hardiman. It's not to say that Riley Hardiman is in our bottom 6 to 8 players, but he is still very young. He is in and out of the side. He was the sub a couple times to start off the season. Last year was his first full game in the side, and then again last night. I thought he was excellent. He just gives us something different off halfback. He's definitely more attacking, but he's also really composed. He does have that defensive element to his game too, which is really, really impressive. I also just love that he is a runner and he's constantly moving ahead of the ball, and he is always an option. If he hands off the ball, then he's able to receive something right back. He definitely has a great work rate and a great work ethic, and that is something we really, really need in this side. I also thought that Will Phillips was great on return. It's not necessarily all about the stats for Will Phil. He had 15 touches last night, but it's the tackles and the clearances for me. He had 9 tackles and 5 clearances, and if we want to play a more defensive brand of football across the ground, and I do think that the defensive football and the defensive pressure coming up from higher up the ground really helps the structure of the backline as well, and really supports the backline nicely. And so if we do have guys like Will Phil doing their job, then I do think it's going to be to our benefit rather than to our detriment. I don't know what happens to him when George comes back next week, but I would hope that he keeps his spot. I think he's really important, and I think he is a really important part of the way this side works, because as a team in the past few weeks, like we've been down 15, 20 tackles on the opposition, but we're all right with Essendon, and we matched their pressure for a lot of the game. And I'd say especially after quarter time, we really did rule the roost for majority of the time. So I definitely feel like he's someone that has to keep his spot in the side. The other one that I want to talk about, and I'm just looking at the stats over here, is Dylan Stephens. I don't know if you can have a legacy game in a loss, but there was something about Dylan Stephens' game last night that really, really, really impressed me. I'm just trying to find his stats here as I go. Clearly not very organised. He had 25 touches last night, 15 kicks, 10 handballs, 8 marks, and a tackle. I just really, really liked what Dylan Stephens brought, and I've definitely been a critic, maybe isn't the right word, but I've definitely questioned where he sits in this side moving forward. But to see Bailey Scott come on as the sub for Jackson Archer and the two of them work really well hand in hand, I thought was really, really impressive. I always want to be proven wrong by players who I maybe don't have faith in or maybe don't see the light that others might see. But I did really like what Dylan Stephens did, and I think he's putting together quite a nice season, and he deserves his spot in the side. He is a classic case of someone who deserves to keep his spot in the side, and that was evident when Bailey Scott was dropped instead of him a few weeks ago, and I would keep him there. I don't see a world right now where we don't play him. I think that he has been really, really good for us, and I do think he has been one of our biggest improvers, and I think he's contributed nicely. It's moving away from him being detrimental, or it's moving away from him just being there, and it's now turned into him just being a really important, maybe not, but just a really nice addition to the side and doing some really nice things on a week-to-week basis. So I think that's awesome for him, and I think that if he can keep this form going, that's where the shift takes place between us being, an okay side and to a better side, is when our bottom players start to lift and start to contribute the way that he has in the past sort of 4 to 5 weeks, I would say. So very, very impressed with him. I was also impressed with Luke Davies-Uniacke, 28 touches, 6 tackles and 6 clearances. I think for LDU, and I said this after the Melbourne game, when he's tackling and when his defensive pressure is up and on, that's when he looks his most impressive. He was definitely the fire starter in the middle of the ground. He was just trying to get something going from the word go. The 6 tackles to go along with the 6 clearances is a really great sign for North, I think. I know there's probably still a little bit of frustration around him and his game and maybe lacking the impact that we thought he would have, but those numbers do say to me that he is trying to do something and he is trying to start something. And so hopefully with a little bit of time and a little bit of polish as a team overall, then he'll really be able to take that next step. And for me, I thought LDU's game was good. And I think a big reason as to why I was impressed with his game last night was the tackling and was the defensive efforts and pressure that we maybe haven't seen from him in the past. I do want to talk about Jai Simpkin, our captain. I know he's come under a lot of scrutiny in the past few weeks. I definitely have put some question marks around him and his form and what his role is as captain at the moment in leading this team. I know that we didn't get the win last night, but I was very impressed with his game. In particular, the 2 goals that he kicked. The first goal he kicked was a great goal. It was a really, really exciting one. Just kind of gave us a bit of a spark that we really needed to start getting on a run. But it was the second goal with 3 minutes or 4 minutes to go in the third quarter. I was sitting right behind him and I just... That's the emotion for me with Jai when he kicked that goal. I just got up out of my seat and I think I had a couple of tears in my eyes and I decided shouting, "That's my captain, that's my captain." And I actually have chills just thinking about that goal last night. He followed it with a shh to the crowd, and we all know who that was aimed at, and I don't need to go into that any further, but he was immense last night. And I don't know if everyone will agree with that, but he had 2 or 3 key moments where in the past few weeks in those same situations, he's just lay down and been beaten. But last night he stood up. Last night he stood up as a captain when we needed him to, and it was up to the rest of the troops to step up with him, and unfortunately we just couldn't get the job done. But 21 touches, 4 tackles, 3 clearances and a couple goals. And big goals in big moments as well, I think was just really crucial and really, really impressive. And it's exactly what we needed from Jai. And when I'm thinking about the goal scorers in general, the one thing I did love after quarter time anyway, is we got as many people involved in the goals and in the passages of play, in the build-up and hitting the scoreboard, because Paul Curtis wasn't there, and we know Paul Curtis has been our best, most consistent goal scorer for us so far in season 2025. So pulling him out of the equation, but being able to bring Finbar into the game early and get Jai on the board and get Bull on the board and get Larks on the board, that's going to be really important while PC is on the sidelines. Now, he's got 2 more games that he will miss. And I know that Jack Darling didn't hit the scoreboard, like I said last night, but he still was able to contribute around the ground a little bit. It could be time just to give him a bit of a rest. I don't know if he bounced back well off a 5-day break. He is so important to that structure. And I think that his physical presence means a lot more to us than we realise, no matter how much he's going to, impact the scoreboard or really impact the general play of the game. But it could be an opportunity. I know we have a 9-day break now, but it could be an opportunity just to rest him for a game. He hasn't had the impact over the past few weeks that he did have to start the season, so maybe just a little spell. It's not anything bad, just maybe that's what he needs. We could potentially look to shuffle the magnets a little bit more. We could go with just Finbar and Suv, or we could potentially look to bring Chom forward. Like, there's plenty of options and we have quite a bit of time to sort that one out. But I just think that getting as many people involved as possible really helped boost the team as a whole. And obviously kicking straight definitely helped. We were pretty accurate last night, which was awesome. Shout out to Tristan Sherry as well. He took it up to his mentor and the old Goldie. We all love Goldie. And I think as North fans, there's no animosity with him choosing to leave the club. But Tristan Sherry's stat line in comparison to Goldie, you've got 39 hit-outs to Goldie's 17. For X, you've got 25 touches as opposed to Goldie's 11. And then Sherry also added 10 clearances, 2 marks, and 4 tackles to his game. So he is very much back to his best. I said this on Further North last week, and I said it to you guys in my review of the Port Adelaide game. It's like we left him in Adelaide in round 3, and we picked him up last weekend when we returned, because he hasn't really put a foot wrong over the past couple of weeks. And he is so important to this side, and he is a really important piece of our puzzle. So to be able to get him firing and to be able to get him involved as much as possible and throwing his weight around is exactly what we need. So it was great to see him back. Speaking of back, Harry Sheasel, 32 touches, 9 marks, 5 tackles. I thought he was good. I think that he definitely did try to start something, and once again definitely looked better than he has looked in other stages of this season. I think when it comes to Harry, it's really just about supporting him, and Jai as well. But Jai is the captain, and he was really able to thrive off the heat that's been put on him over the past few weeks, and that's escalated over sort of the build up to this game. But I think Harry was good. He was solid, and I think right now we just need him playing good, consistent football, and then hopefully he'll be able to refine that next level that we know he's capable of. Speaking of being back, I thought Colby McKercher was fantastic last night, allowing him a bit of freedom to run and carry the ball. Those running bounces, that goal was absolutely sensational. I thought that was Kircher's best game for the year. He didn't really look out of place. He didn't really put too many feet wrong, and I was really impressed with what he was able to bring to the table. And in front of a big crowd as well. That's another thing I wanted to touch on. There was all these complaints during the week about why are these two teams playing on a Thursday night? It's going to be an absolute snooze fest. Well, I have no doubt that everyone watching at home had their eyes glued to the screen, and there was over 35,000 people at Marvel Stadium last night. It was an awesome atmosphere, and it was a really, really intense finish. And everyone who did get down there, despite the last time we played in Melbourne was on Good Friday, and it was an absolute shit show. I just want to applaud everyone who did make their way to Marvel Stadium, and I really hope that despite the result, it does show that we are capable of playing really good, really competitive football, because we're now sitting here at the end of round 8, and I would say that there are only 2 performances that are outliers for me in the season so far this year, and that is the Sydney game and the Carlton game, where we just were uncompetitive and pretty much didn't show for the entirety of the game. But every other game so far this year, we've definitely shown something. Some obviously more than others. Even that Gold Coast game, the scoreline I don't think did justice to the performance that we had and what we were able to do in 2 quarters of football. I do think that the blown out margin probably, I don't know if it flattered the Gold Coast Suns specifically, but that's kind of how it feels like when you think back on that game. But in the last 2 weeks in particular, our ability to just turn the game into a bit of a slog, and rather than allow for this free-flowing, uncontested football and really high attacking football for the opponents, the defensive structure has really taken shape across the entirety of the ground. In that forward line, like I said, Jacob Constanti's been a huge part of that. In the middle of the ground, you've got the likes of Luke Parker doing Luke Parker things, but LDU contributing last night. And then obviously the addition of Will Phillips really, really helped shape the midfield as well. George Wardlaw obviously didn't play last night, but he's been a big part of that. And then the back line as well, I think Charlie Combin's marking has been excellent. I thought Luke McDonald had a bit of a shaky start, but he did grow into the game as the game went on. And I think Callan Dawson's been really, really solid as well. He's definitely been able to put together two very, very impressive performances, and I would just stick with him. I think that's what we absolutely need to do. We need to try and stick with this side as best as possible, and I know there are players I would love to see back in the side, personal favourites of mine that aren't playing at the moment, but I can also take a step back and acknowledge that right now, over the past couple of weeks, the side as a whole has looked the best it's really looked so far this season. George Wardlaw will probably return next week, provided that he's injury free. We will lose Jackson Archer, unfortunately, once again. So I wonder how our backline looks and how it takes shape in the absence of him, because I think him coming back into the backline over the past game and a half anyway has really shown to me how important he is to this backline. I never doubted it, but I think him being there after not being there for so long really highlights that. So it looks like we're in for a bit of an interesting week and a half. I don't know about you guys, but I'm absolutely exhausted. The last week has just been an emotional roller coaster on steroids, and being a North Melbourne supporter is always an emotional roller coaster, and there are always so many highs and so many lows, more lows at the moment than highs, but this week has really taken it out of me. 2 games within 5 days, and just about every single dominating headline across the news media for the AFL in the past few days being North related. It's been quite exhausting, and it can be quite difficult, if I'm honest, to face up and try and find a story and try and find something out of this game that we can kind of take and move on with it. So I'm just going to leave that one there for today. I think I've given you guys enough to think about, given you enough to ponder over. I would love to hear how you guys are feeling after the game. No doubt there's a lot of broken hearts across North supporters today, and probably will sting for a few days after. Feel free to leave all of your thoughts and comments down below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Kanga TV for endless North Melbourne content. We can also keep chatting over on socials, Kanga TV Show on Instagram, X, Facebook, and you can send me an email as well if you have anything more to say. You guys enjoy a lovely football-free weekend. I will be taking the weekend off, just a little bit of downtime, a little bit of peace and quiet before we fire up again and get ready for round 9 and our clash in Tasmania against Brisbane. Look after yourselves, have a lovely weekend, and I will see you very soon. Go Roos.